Y'all, I think I did this. I think this is my fault. I mean, how else could you explain a Futurama Revival being announced 9 days after I ranked every single episode? A 2-hour video breaking down the entire run of the series, talking at length about every single one, only for it to become obsolete a single week later.
This is by a wide margin the least likely thing that has ever happened.
But obviously you're here to hear me talk about this Futurama Revival, so let's do it. And if you missed it, I also did a little live stream on my second channel yesterday to react to the news with you, so feel free to check out the VOD over there. Here are the details of the revival as outlined by The Hollywood Reporter. Nearly 10 years after it signed off, Futurama has been revived for a 20-episode run on Hulu, the third platform for the animated comedy from creators Matt Groening and David X. Cohen. The series that aired its first 5 seasons on Fox before being revived for 3 more at Comedy Central will return to production this month for a 2023 premiere. Following an extended deal-making period, original stars Billy West and Katie Seagal, along with ensemble players who voiced multiple characters, Tress MacNeille, Maurice LaMarche, Lauren Tom, Phil Lamar, and David Herman, will all return. John DiMaggio, who provided the voice behind the wisecracking robot with the shiny metal ass, Bender, is finalizing a deal to return as well, though it has not yet closed. So obviously there is a lot to unpack here. Let's break it down step by step. First of all, we've got 20 new episodes coming with a premiere date slated for 2023. If I were a betting man, I would guess that these episode orders will be structured a lot like the Comedy Central era orders, or more recently the Netflix Disenchantment episode orders, which is to say that the order will probably be split in half and broadcast over 2 separate broadcast seasons. So I think we should probably expect 10 episodes in 2023, an additional 10 in 2024, and any more beyond that will depend on performance and whether or not Hulu wants to renew the show again. The question that remains is, will the series be released episodically like it was previously, or will they embrace the streaming format and drop all 10 at once? Hulu's other big adult animated series, Solar Opposites, does the latter, as does Groening's Netflix series Disenchantment. Next, it appears that Matt Groening and David X. Cohen are slated to return, with Cohen likely running the show once more. This was a given, you can't really do the show without them. They have currently signed on every major cast member to return to their roles, with the one holdout, of course, being the voice of Bender, John DiMaggio, and this is obviously a huge deal, so let's talk about it. I'll just be blunt about this. Continuing the show without DiMaggio would be a massive mistake. A disaster, honestly. That voice is irreplaceable. Now, I think that Hulu likely announced the finalization of this deal in part to gain leverage over DiMaggio in their negotiations, basically saying that they're willing to make the show without him, so sign the deal. Something very similar happened back in 2009 when they were bringing back the series to Comedy Central, as the entire cast was threatened to be replaced shortly before a deal was finally made. However, I think this strategy backfired pretty majorly for the studio. The support for DiMaggio's return is overwhelming, with fans and voice actors alike rushing to his defense and many claiming they simply will not watch the show if he doesn't return, and honestly, I'm really happy to see that. Personally, I think Hulu will come to their senses, they will renegotiate, and a deal will be made. There's too much at stake to continue the show without him. It's just got to happen. Hopefully that gets worked out sooner than later, since there is allegedly a table read for the first episode on Monday. I imagine we will find out by then. I encourage all of you to show your support for DiMaggio across social media. Now let's talk about writers. They didn't make any major announcements on this side of things, but writer Cody Ziegler announced on Twitter that he's been staffed as a writer for the next season. Ziegler has written on Rick and Morty, Craig of the Creek, the upcoming Disney Plus series She-Hulk, and a bunch of comics. He's a great choice to jump into the writer's room, but fortunately this also means that they're not just going back to the exact same group of writers as before. One thing I was worried about is that they wouldn't get any fresh perspectives in the writer's room. The Comedy Central era largely kept the same writers as before, and ideas started to run a bit thin as they went on. Now, of course, they still need to bring in some of the veterans from the original run, hopefully names like Bill Odenkirk, Ken Keeler, Patrick Verone, the list goes on. There's plenty of people you can bring back, but I think it's very encouraging that they're bringing in fresh blood as well. Now, the next question is obviously, how do I feel about this? Well, to be honest, I have very mixed feelings. This will be Futurama's third resurrection after its initial cancellation, and the truth is, it had an amazing run and an incredible ending. That last series finale felt so final. I have a hard time reconciling the idea that they will continue the show after that story and potentially ruin such a perfect ending. They already tempted fate before. The Devil's Hands Are Idle Playthings was an incredible finale. They still brought the show back, and they managed to end the show beautifully once again. It appears the show will be a continuation and not an outright reboot, as the script cover that Cody Ziegler posted on Twitter showcases the old Fox production codes used for Futurama, 8ACV01. This means that this is production season 8, picking up where they left off previously. Granted, it could just be a production code. Maybe they really are rebooting it entirely, but I expect that they aren't. The truth is if it were up to me, I'd not have gone this route for a Futurama revival. I'd much rather see a big budget theatrical film, but obviously that feels less likely in today's media landscape. But I have a hard time justifying continuing the show after Meanwhile. The series finale was just so good. It was lovely. That being said, now that the show is officially happening, all I can do is hope that it's great. And honestly, as long as they re-sign DiMaggio, I am encouraged by the fact that they're bringing in some new writers. And there are things I'd really love to see out of the show in its new iteration. For one, I hope that it tries to stand out a bit from the previous versions. Give us a reason for this continuation to exist. Give us something new to explore from the characters or world. The way the series finale played out would mean that Fry and Leela are no longer married. And meanwhile, Leela accepts Fry's proposal while frozen in time, and they get married and live a life out together as the world around them stands still. But the end of the episode sees the professor find a way back by sending them back in time to before he conceived of the device that froze time, which would wipe out all of the events of the time freeze and finale, including Fry and Leela's marriage. But there is likely to be a significant time skip in the series since the show last aired in 2013. Personally, I would love to see that Fry and Leela have gotten married in the time elapsed between. The show's inception was nearly 25 years ago. I think it would be really smart of them to cleanly and deliberately start to change the status quo. The Comedy Central seasons tried to have their cake and eat it too by dipping their toes into status quo shifts, but only when it was convenient. I wouldn't even mind if they actually truly pushed the show forwards with a time skip by aging up the characters, or maybe even introducing some new characters. I'd really just love for the show to try something new with this revival, instead of simply trying to recapture the old magic, which has proven difficult time and time again for countless different properties. In fact, my real dream is for these new episode orders to fully embrace serialization. Futurama was a unique series in that even though it was an episodic network sitcom, they did include some blatantly serialized elements. They were really smart about their continuity. Now that the show is free of the restraints of network television, it would be so cool to see them lean into this further. I've always wanted to see what the series could do with a longer ongoing story arc. And there are also a handful of plot lines from the previous runs that could prove fruitful to revisit. I know I never shut up about this one, but the whole "the other" tease still eats at me. Nibbler refers to Leela as the other in the episode The Why of Fry, in reference to Fry being the savior of the universe, and it's never truly followed up, even after Nibbler says this.
If you ever need a savior again, just ask.
Oh, we will. We will.
A lot of commenters insist that this was all just Nibbler manipulating Fry into going back to the future to ensure the universe isn't destroyed, but fundamentally I really dislike this read. The entire episode's conflict is about how Fry's life was altered by somebody else's choice, and I think it would be cheap if the answer here was that Fry is now just manipulated into going back for a different reason. This could tie into another idea that was left on the cutting room floor in the Comedy Central era. The episode Law and Oracle was originally meant to showcase a time-traveling character who literally moves backwards in time. Like everything they did was reversed. Their perception of time was reversed, making it impossible for the crew to understand or communicate with that character. The character was then meant to be revealed as Fry and Leela's son. I think if they can revisit this concept and give Fry and Leela's child a similar universe-saving type role, it could explain Leela's importance as well. Ultimately, I don't care if they do it this way or not, but these are both concepts I'd really love to see revisited. I'd also love to see the return of the Brain Spawn from The Day the Earth Stood Stupid and The Why of Fry. To me, it always felt like these were really interesting antagonists who could have benefited from more appearances. Another storyline that went completely ignored outside of Bender's game was the reveal that Mom's son Ignor is actually Farnsworth's son as well. While I'm not a huge fan of Bender's game, I did like this reveal, and it felt like something they had planned for a while. But what baffles me still is that they literally never even reference this fact again in the Comedy Central run. There's a ton of narrative opportunity there with Ignor and Farnsworth being such different people, and when you throw in the professor's clone/son Cupid into the mix, you got a pretty weird little family. During my live stream yesterday, one of the things that I was so happy to see brought up over and over again by different people is Zoidberg's ending in the original run, where he starts dating Marianne, played by Emilia Clarke. So many of you want this relationship to continue into the Hulu run, and I could not agree more. While it definitely felt like the series giving Zoidberg a happy ending right before the finale, I think it would be kind of cheap to undo that development to revert to the status quo. They should be confident in the story decision they made and explore where Zoidberg's new relationship could go. And for now, folks, that's pretty much all I've got to say. While I think that bringing back this series is tempting fate, now that it's happening, I'm gonna be cheering for it. I really, really hope it's great. And chances are I'll be covering it here on the channel as it airs, which will be a really weird experience since all my other videos had the benefit of looking at the series as a whole. I hope the show goes in bold new directions. I hope they get creative new voices to tell these stories. I hope they move away from the status quo and maybe explore serialization. And of course, I hope that I love it. A man can dream, right?
A man can dream.
Johnny! Two cellos!